Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. All right. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman, and something is playing at the same time. I've got a window open. I've got to close. 1 second. Hold on, guys. I'm not sure where it went. Okay, this is really embarrassing. Oh, I see it. There we go. Okay. Technical glitch. All right. So, welcome to the show. I'm really glad you're here. This is a great one. I'm going to be speaking with people I follow on Twitter pretty religiously. I mean, I keep track of, whatever they're saying because I homeschool my own child and I'm very pro homeschooling, as you probably know if you follow me. And I want to keep abreast of what's going on in the homeschooling world. And these folks do that. So I don't have to. No, I mean, I try, but they do a better job. So today I have Jonathan and Adriana Prescott. They are with me to talk about their Homeschool Life LLC. They're actually trained engineers and serial entrepreneurs. They're also devoted parents. They started Homeschool Life to share their radical new approach to home education. And they explained that in their first book, Kids Don't Need School. And that's one of the things we are here to talk about. We're going to debunk the myth that kids do need school. And we'll be talking about several things like the parent-child relationship, teaching to mastery, not to grade, and instilling agency. These are very important things that are not getting done in school and that just don't get done in a school environment, if you want my honest opinion. Before we do get started and bring them in, I would like to ask you please to hit that like button and also subscribe if you're not already subscribed to the channel. I'd also like to ask you to consider joining my Woke Screen community. That's at wokescreen.com/the reason we learn. And when you go to that page, you will also find a community for parents. There is something called The Reason We Parent. It's a support group that meets every Sunday night. If you're interested in being connected with me on a more private support group forum, that's where you can go and join the private community. So, as I mentioned, we are going to talk today with Adriana and Jonathan about homeschooling. Please share this out. It's live. I will take your comments and questions as they come up and are relevant, but otherwise we're going to try to get through this because there's a lot to talk about and I'm really excited. So please join me in welcoming them to The Reason We Learn. Hey, you guys.
How are y'all?
I'm so excited. Oh, I have to go back the other way because the way I had it with that layout, well, that's goofy. Hold on. Where did it go? All right, there it is. Sorry. I had this other thing, but with the two of you in one screen, it made it too small. So
that's a common problem because we're usually two and podcasts are usually, one person per camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I'm having all kinds of technical issues today. Obviously, I need a nap. But anyway, I'm so glad you're here. As I told everybody, I've followed you guys on Twitter for a long time. And I'm always excited. I know this sounds really silly. I'm not usually like a fangirl, but whenever I say something and then you guys like it and share it, I'm like, oh, goody. I feel like I'm doing something right. Well, the reason for that is that, as I told you before the show, I'm just such a huge proponent of homeschooling. I really, truly am. And I will tell people, I'll say, hey, I understand it's not for everyone. And that's true. It's not for everyone. And I'm not 100% anti-school. I think there are some excellent schools out there, but I genuinely believe that for most people, most children and most families, certainly intact families where, you love your kids and you want the best for them, which I think is most families. I really do think that some version of parent-directed education, I even prefer that to homeschooling, is the best way. I really do. And especially in the world we live in today. What do you guys think? Do you think I'm right or do you think I'm taking it too far?
Oh, absolutely. It's not far enough.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. We are definitely huge promoters of homeschoolers, and more importantly, we're advocates for children. And that means that we want children to actually learn and get something out of what they're studying. It's not about what the public school system does, which is memorization to pass a grade. And that's not learning, that's not
If that,
preparing them. Yeah,
if that.
exactly.
So that's the
Exactly.
thing that I've noticed is that I'm to the point where I almost wish they would do it that minimum amount. When I see a third grader who doesn't know, basic math, just
Mhm.
basic addition, or they can't read at all. I'm not
Mhm.
talking, chapter books or whatever, although they should be able to read simple chapter books by third grade, but we're talking about kids who barely know the full alphabet and all the letter sounds in many cases. And some degree of memorization would be preferable to that. And that's pretty sad.
Well, just imagine how much we actually spend in, to bring that level of incompetence to our school system. I mean, we mortgage, we allow the government to lien our homes for that privilege of such a huge mediocrity.
It is. Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah.
Now, I'm curious, did you always know that you were going to homeschool?
No,
No, it's a journey.
Yeah.
Our daughter,
You want to?
our daughter we knew she was gifted from the very beginning because she was learning at a rapid speeds, and so learning how to read early on, and we knew that there was gonna be a school for her. So
Right.
and if we were to put her in a school, they would ruin her. I didn't want that. So
She started reading, and believe it or not, she started reading her first words and indications of ability to read at 10 months old. And yeah, it was.
Wow.
I know
That's profoundly gifted. That's not just regular gifted.
So we, as both engineers, we thought, well, there's no school that's going to handle this asynchronous development. We have to do something. We looked at different options, private tutors even, and specialized school. But there's really said, you know what? Why don't we just homeschool her?
Yeah, but before we did that, we were still working, and we had a child. She was preschool age, and we both had to show up to work, so we had to, send her somewhere to be watched over. So we started her in the Montessori schools, and so Montessori schools is far superior,
right?
If you want to compare to their hands-on approach and independence. So she did have a year and a half of preschool.
And in preschool, she was reading chapter books, Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farms and Anne of Green Gables. She'd read those herself.
Yeah, right. They gave her a test for second graders because that's as far as they had a test on her reading ability. She was way beyond that. So right. As a pre-kindergarten, but we decided then on that we want to continue on a different way. We love the Montessori school, but she was going to outgrow the little Montessori school anyway. So we thought homeschool is the only other option.
And that began our journey into homeschooling. And right now she's 14. She's already in college. Mm-hmm. She's taking Japanese. She has her own business. She makes vanilla extract, which is extracts by Annabelle. And we're getting ready to move that line into the local grocery store here and the farmers market. Mm-hmm. It's our third year in the farmers market, and she's a little entrepreneur is what she is, and she'll network with other vendors and so yeah, she's quite interesting.
So she's had life experiences that have to do with learning, not the other way around, where you're just learning for the sake of learning, just to because we're supposed to, because some states are more a rigor, they require more, and so that's the thing that parents get so stressed about is, we're required to do all this, and they think it has to be like the public schools do it, but no, it doesn't. Right. As homeschoolers, we have the freedom to do things a lot differently.
Right.
So
the parents become the curriculum builders.
Yes.
And we have the power to direct that education. And this is not a new thing. In fact, public school is actually the experiment.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. And I don't think people know enough of the history to realize that for really all of human history, children were educated to the extent that they were educated, either at home or in their smaller community, or where, their town or village, or by their grandparents or something, just decided by the family. What they would learn, where they would learn, when and for how long each day, how many months of the year, depending on what else was going on in the family. And I think because most people alive today have always known public school, they just assume it has always been this way. And in fact, it is not. It's a new experiment. And I would say it's a massive failure across the board, not just in the United States. I mean, even in other countries where one might say kids are doing better, like they'll look at China. And for example, and I taught ESL to Chinese students for 3 years, and you have 6-year-olds doing, long division and so forth in English, not just in Chinese. And so, yeah, okay, they are performing at a higher level academically, because this is what's expected of them. But if I were to think about my students and how happy they were, how creative they were, how able they were to even just come up with their own, forget creativity, like I'm writing a fiction story or something, but just answering a question that was not something they memorized. No. So they were doing better by certain objective criteria, but I wouldn't say they were living better. I wouldn't say they were happier. And so even that version of public school experiment, I think, is a failure, despite their performance, because
children are capable. That's the takeaway. Children are capable,
right?
And but the question is at what cost?
Right. I didn't have children to raise a college student. I didn't have children to raise a worker. I didn't have children to raise a CEO or any other thing. I just wanted happy people. I wanted to produce more humans who hopefully were happier and better adjusted than I was, right? That was the better that I wanted for my kids, was that they would grow up knowing they were loved, feeling capable, feeling like the world was their oyster, to the best of their ability, that there was something they wanted to do, that they were physically and intellectually capable of doing, that nothing arbitrarily was standing in their way. That's what I wanted for my kids. Beyond that, I couldn't begin to say. It wasn't like I want a doctor, or a lawyer or whatever. And then when I talk to parents and they'll say, but they have to get in college, or they have to do this, and I say, stop, just stop for a second. And that's why I titled the channel, like, The Reason We Learn. When you held your baby in your arms for the first time and you looked at that little face, were you thinking about how well they were going to do in school? Were you thinking about standing at their graduation and, cheering as they grabbed their diploma? Or were you just hoping they'd be a happy little person and you were just going to love them? And what was your dream? What was your hope? Because I think we've gotten so far away from that, in part because of societal pressure and expectations and people telling you this is what the right people do and the good people and the smart people. And parents have lost their own sense of autonomy and their own sense of power in their families. And do you have anything that you can say to help people remember that?
Well, let me first say that all that you mentioned, they coined that as academic excellence, right?
Yes.
That's the thing they said, academic excellence. We will make your children ready for college because we let them have academic excellence. It's no guarantee for success. It doesn't make them understand how life works, how to be happy, right?
That's right.
And it goes back to socialization, because the thing is most people don't realize that they should not conflate the term socialization with socializing. And that's one of my tweets that I constantly retweet, to tell people the difference between primary socialization and secondary socialization. Mm-hmm. And this actually gets to the crux of the matter. And that is, the primary socialization is what happens in families. We talk about morals and virtues and how to be a good person and those type of things. And this is the socialization that matters, that we follow. What secondary, and this is psychologists, okay? What secondary socialization is a socialization to a system. Think about it being like employment training, right? That's their system, the employer. Our school, it is training to their system. Now we know that when you go through employee training, they don't talk about morals and virtues and stuff like this. Okay, they talk about rules, and this is how we do things, right? Same thing in the school system. And people say, well, how are they going to be socialized?
Right.
How are they going to go through? What about socialization? And what they really mean by that, not the teachers, because they know, they should know the difference, but the layman, they think that it's like being with friends and stuff. But homeschoolers have plenty of friends. They have plenty of activities. They have groups that they go and do things with. I mean, that there's even in our town, there is a homeschoolers dance and a homeschoolers graduation.
Right.
So
what I was going to say is they're more well adjusted to society because they have access to all age groups and different generations, as opposed to in the schools where they only feel attachment to their peers. The same
right. You're arbitrarily grouped with people the same age, and that really doesn't happen in the real world. We're not in a room with only people within a year of us.
Exactly. And their peers are not the best people to get advice from because they're inexperienced as well. But this is what kids are getting most of their, validation from, not from the parents.
Right.
But, when you talk about, and I've done this too, I've told people there are groups, there are co-ops, there are all these things. I've watched parents, especially if parents have had their children in public school, but even parents who are just have very young preschool children and they're thinking about what to do. And especially if they went to public school or school, period, they weren't homeschooled. When you start mentioning all of these things, you can see almost the wheels turning like, oh, I have to do work. And I don't mean they're lazy. No. I don't. I want to be sure that people listening don't think I'm saying they're lazy. Your point is so well taken. They were socialized to the system as children. So they did not see any modeling. They did not have anybody showing them how to build community or how to build a social life, how to build connections and your own, network for your family that didn't include this building that you're assigned to. So when you start talking about there's groups and there's this, there's that, I think some people get intimidated because they've not been socialized to know how to go to a park day, for example, where I don't know anybody. And
isn't that interesting?
It's interesting because it's the product of the same system. They didn't really master the socialization.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, this is a life skill of making new friends that aren't in a place that you're like all forced to be. Like, oh, you're all forced to be in the building. Now there it is. I don't have to do anything. But when parents themselves, especially if you're not particularly extroverted. Now, for some parents, this is, fun. I'm going to go meet all kinds of new people in my town. But those people I would say are fewer and farther between. And especially if the parents have to work and it's a dual income household, the intimidation factor of, oh my God, I have to find groups. I have to find a co-op. It feels overwhelming. And so what I'm asking you in this question is, what can you say to those parents listening to this who feel that way, who feel like, I get it, and I think it sounds really good and everything, but I don't even know where to start. It feels so overwhelming. What's the first step? Like, what do I do first to get myself over this hump of feeling like I can't do it, so I'm just going to go to the school?
Yeah, it's I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It is going to be uncomfortable because you will become vulnerable. You have to open yourself up to the other parents and say, hey, I'm really nervous.
Right.
Because most of the time they're all nervous. They're all on the same boat. And you have to be genuine and just say, hey, this is a little odd, but hey, my name is Adriana, nice to meet you. You just start,
and let's back up a little bit, because there's when we have a child, right, there is parents do teach them. They teach them how to walk. They teach them how to use the bathroom. There's already education that's happening, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we make a point saying that homeschooling is just parenting, but we've been outsourcing parenting for so long, we've forgotten what it means.
Mm-hmm.
So, but what it boils down to is attachment. Okay. And when we have less attachments, and we grow up in a home with less attachments, it becomes very difficult, and children are more apt to attach themselves to peers and peer groups. And what Dr. Gabor Mate talked about in one of his famous book,
hang on to your children.
Hold on to your children. It talks about how the parental bonding is far more important than peer bonding. Mm-hmm. And that's where we need to start. We need to start by improving the parent-child relationship and treating children with love and respect, and not treat them like second-class citizens. And that's
the first experience of socialization.
It's the first experience, yes,
parent and child.
And that's where we can become the mentor to teach them values and virtues and how to behave, not as an authoritarian, but as somebody who is guiding them. Right. And because mirror neurons, yes, they want to mirror what we do.
We're always a template for our children, good and bad. So you have to be cognizant of that, what you're doing. And just the same as we taught our children courtesy and grace, saying please and thank you, and being polite. It's also an extension on how to greet people. Mm-hmm. And you have to be courageous and be that template for your child. And when you go meet people, you say, this is uncomfortable even for me. I'm in a vulnerable place, but I'm going to teach you how to make friends, how to make acquaintances, how to put yourself out there. And yes, be prepared for those few people that are going to be rude. But remember, when you're in that situation with other homeschoolers, they're all in the same boat. They're hungry to reach out, but they're too shy to do it. So,
right. And I think there is a lot of opportunity for people to leverage their own skills. I mean, you've done, right? So, you wrote a book, but you've also used your own abilities to make your child's, learning and your whole experience with homeschooling that much better. So you'll have some people who are sort of more introverted, but you know what they might be great at? They might be great at planning things behind the scenes, getting things organized, doing research. Then you have your more extroverted people who are really good at networking and going out and meeting people, introducing new people, drawing new people in to a co-op or a field day project or something. You want to organize a sports team, you want to organize a dance, whatever it is. And just like you do in your professional life or your adult life, I think it's just like you said, it's parenting. It's also just living. It's yes. living. So, and I think if people can just get out of the paradigm that educating happens within a system, like you said, that it's part of living. It's part of parenting. You've added this new person to your family, and now, like they fit into your life rather than you molding around their life. School tends to force parents. There's another thing people don't think about, that adults get forced into the child's life with the school system. The calendar is their calendar, not yours. So you go on vacation when the school says you can go on vacation. Your holidays are what they say you can have as holidays. Your waking up and going to bed schedule is what conforms to that. And with homeschooling, or whatever you want to call it, it's your family's rhythm. What works around your work schedule, your sleep schedule, wake schedule, hobby schedule. Some people have sports they like to do that go on into the night, hockey, for example, whatever. Okay, so you wake up a little later. These are things you can do. And that also more closely mirrors real life. So your child is learning that, in my real life, I will make choices that align to, around my whole, everything I do when I wake, when I go to sleep, and there are going to be trade-offs. So I think, and you mentioned too, that children spend about 16,000 hours away from their parents when they're in the school system. How does that affect attachment? Just not physically being there.
It's that's the thing, is they're pair bonded by that time.
And that's one of the problems that we run into is especially with the pandemic. The pandemic, people started to see that their children are walking around with what they thought was PTSD, because they're coming from a system and they're no longer in that system. And then they realize that, do I really know my child? This is because normally we go to work, they go to school, we separate and we come back home at night, and then we argue about homework and all this other stuff. And our lives become a mystery, but we still think we have some family connection. And with homeschooling, you rebuild that family connection. And a lot of times it has to be rebuilt.
Yes,
because the children have already been peer bonded. And so they'll make statements like, well, I really miss my friends and everything. And that's cool and everything. But if you begin with a parental bond, then what happens is the foundation of the family is now established.
Right.
And it's not, you get to be able to share things with your children, and they share with you about life and stuff like this. And heck, you can my daughter and I even argue about some things, and then at the end we say, well, that was a really good argument.
Yeah, and that's the key to being able to teach anything from our book. It's like, how do you teach anything? Because a lot of the challenges and struggles, especially with teens and parents, if they were peer bonded and they're brought them home, they're going to be alone. They want to be alone in their room a lot. They're not going to want to study what you're asking them to study. And so that's where the conflict comes from. And so you have to rebuild. And when you rebuild, then you can teach them anything. Then they want to learn from you. Then it's more like
they trust you.
Yeah, you're the new peer now. You're
like the expert. At least they see you more as, when they go to school. I find that the kids very quickly. So you send a child to kindergarten, the same child was like, "Mommy, tell me this," or "Daddy, tell me that," and suddenly they come like, "You don't know. You're not a teacher," and it happens so fast. And I've actually heard from parents who say that it hurts, and I'm like, "Well,
yeah.
What did you expect?" I mean, in a way, they sort of have to think that. Did you want them to go to school and say to the teacher, "You don't know what you're talking about"? Now, increasingly, we do want them to say that, but at least in their own heads, for those who go to school. But is that really healthy for the child? This is another thing I tell people who have their kids in the schools. How do you feel about the fact that you're now aware of how bad things are? What is the lesson that your child is learning that you are letting them go there, that you are taking them there, that you are dropping them off, that you are saying, go in there and behave? You're not saying go in and argue. You're not saying go in and reject what they're teaching you, because that would sound very strange. Go in and survive the day. And then the kid's like, thanks, I guess.
Yeah. And that's really a very good point, is that whenever we drop them off to a place where they don't feel safe, or they're being bullied, or they're in a stress environment, they see you as the one who's doing it to them.
It's one of the reasons I believe that some of the kids who are severely bullied don't tell their parents, or to the extent that they do, they don't go to their parents with the worst of it, which is, I'm feeling like I might hurt myself. So they might tell them I'm being bullied, and they might say, can you do something? And the parent in the school, and then nothing happens. But there's that final conversation that needs to happen that isn't happening. And I can't shake the feeling that they're feeling as hopeless as they feel, because they're in a triangle situation. They don't feel like the parent is truly on their side, or why would they keep taking them back there when nothing is happening? So it's just such a tragedy. I don't want to blame parents. I'm not saying like it's their fault. I'm just saying I wish people would think about this more, that our children learn lessons, as you said, from everything we do. They're watching us, they're listening, they're seeing how we solve problems. And when it comes to their own education, we're showing them how much they matter when we choose where they go to school and what we think about it, and when why. So I think to the extent that people can overcome any hesitation or intimidation they have about how much work it's going to be, the next thing I would say is, and I think you make this point as well, I've seen you on Twitter do it, that it actually makes parenting easier in many respects than having them in school. Because as I said, you are not the authority. The peers, potentially the teachers or administrators are. And when something goes wrong, you don't have power to fix it or change it. So whatever those problems come up in preteen years, teen years, whatever, I know the difference for me, even homeschooling littles, my life was so easy. I mean, in the emotional and psychological sense.
Right.
It was challenging physically. I had to get things planned. I had to do things, whatever. But my goodness, the things that some parents I knew had to do, I got to get to the bus. I got to pack the lunch. I got to do this. I'm like, I'm so stressed out. We can't go on vacation. And I'm like, I don't have any of that.
And when are we building that family relationship?
When is that happening?
And we are so centered on saying, oh, well, it's the nuclear family. That's what we need to go to. And I'm thinking, no, it's actually not. It's more. It's the extended family. It's the corporate family, what they call it. That's the support group. That's the clan, if you will, the family group that can really, because all civilization is based upon the family, or at least it should, not government. And so we need to realize that if you want to change the future, we have to step away from the government coercion, and they get that in the schools is because it's a system of stress compliance.
Sure.
And you have to do it our way. You have to do it this way. And they don't do anything about bullying. They really don't. And that's been going on for a good number of years, where, I mean, I remember back in the 90s, you'd have news reports on bullies and stuff. And, we went to them for 6 times for the bullying and they never did anything. Yeah, it's by design. I'm not saying that there's a cabal of people, trying to control things.
No.
But the thing about it is whatever source it comes from, it's still happening. And so
I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was going to say, you have to think about the incentives. Too few people think about incentives. They think the school is incentivized to stop the bullying, but they're actually not. They're incentivized to stop the complaining about the bullying.
Correct.
And so they, think about what it would take. Let's walk it through. Student A is being bullied by student B relentlessly. Okay. If I'm the administrator, the principal, whoever, I have to go to the kid doing the bullying. I have to find a way to physically stop them. Now, think of the degree of force I'm going to have to use. They're in a public school. I'm not allowed to expel anymore. That's been done away with. Okay. So what kind of force do I have? What authority do I have to prevent them from doing this? These kids share hallways, bathrooms, etc. Even if I move them out of different classes, there is a limit to what force I can bring to bear to stop the bad person from doing the bad things. And because of that, what I really want most is I really want the person being bullied to leave. I can't stop the bad person. And I certainly can't evaporate or give an invisibility cloak to the person that they're bullying. So my best case scenario is that they go away, that they just find another school to go to, either tolerate it, suck it up and deal with it, or they find some other place to go, because I have I am absolutely limited in what I could do. Now, back in the olden days, if you had a situation where somebody's physically abusing somebody relentlessly, you're expelled. Get out, don't come back. You're a menace to society, or they put you in a reform school or something like that. But that they did away with that decades ago. We haven't had administrators empowered to use real force discipline in schools. I'm not talking corporal punishment. I'm saying get out.
Right.
You cannot be here anymore. Just what you do in a private school or a parochial school. They can't do that in a public school. So now what do?
And then there's problems with even that system. It's like
Exactly.
their system revolves around the use of force.
That's never going to work, because you have to, in order to break that, you have to change the root cause. And that means instill a culture of respect.
Well, and to your point, that starts at home.
Yes.
The socialization, the real socialization about what kind of person you're going to be happens at home. And so what happens is, if you take the 16,000 hours that the kid is not at home, it's not that they're being, they are being socialized to the system, but nothing's replacing that.
Yeah, exactly.
So unless you're intensively focusing when they get home, and good luck with that, there's not a lot of hours, intensively focusing on how to be a good person and modeling being a good person, or, and people say, we go to church every Sunday. That's a start. But I mean, it's like one day, and you, unless you're focusing on, they're missing countless thousands of opportunities to learn how to have proper, good character, treat other people well, etc. They're not getting that in school. And now, as you know, they've tried to replace good parenting, proper socialization, what good families do and are even able to do within some school systems. And they're trying to replace it with this thing called social and emotional learning, which of course we've all covered ad nauseum, that it's social engineering towards the group and away from the family. And I've tried to tell people, like, you're going to get some socialization, but it isn't going to be the kind of individual character building that you think it's going to be.
Right. It's still socialization to a system. Okay. It's just a new system, and it's a system based upon Marxist ideals and whatever cultural Marxism that exists. I mean, to be honest, the whole Marxism as an economic theory died away years ago, and because the thing is capitalism was far more successful. The revolution wasn't going to happen economically, but now, especially with Marcuse and some of the other and with more the academics that came into this country early on, is it's become a cultural Marxism. And they absorbed all these movements, the feminist movement, the liberation movements, and all of them. I won't go into every single one, but you understand.
Sure.
They absorbed all these cultural movements, and of course with Marcuse, with his book Eros and Civilization back in the 60s, that was a horrendous attack, and set the groundwork against an attack on the family. And they wanted a new society where all these aspects of the family and everything were broken, and that it would usher in the revolution and the society that they wanted. And so all these, they viewed all these aspects of family as fascism. And that's in the book. That's not my words.
Which is it's so backwards, because the family is your best protection against all forms of tyranny, which I think is why they're attacking it.
Yeah.
And, so when we think about the bullying, getting back to the bullying thing, it's a kind of a tyranny of a bully, right? That's sort of a totalitarian in the child's life. This is the person, the dictator that I have to avoid in order to feel or then to be safe. And they really can't. And the school can't protect them, because the school, the administrators, et cetera, are simply incentivized to do other things. This is your individual child is not a priority. They will give lip service. They will tell you we care. They use all the right words. But when you watch their feet, you watch what they do, it is so clearly not the case.
No, they have hundreds of students they have to manage. They don't have time to address the few cases. They really don't.
They really don't.
Yeah.
So, and the thing is, if you keep them in the system and the parent says, well, I'm going to teach them everything else when they're at home, there's not much time at home because parents are exhausted from work and every other aspects of being an adult. And the kids are exhausted from coming from school. And plus they have to do homework. So more time away from parents because they got to do homework.
And so some parents say, well, I can't spend 8 hours teaching my kid.
No.
And I'm going, okay, wait.
Spend 8 hours doing homeschooling.
Okay. Do you realize that public school wastes a lot of time? Logistically, they're more trained to handle large groups of people and managing schedules and all this other stuff. But as far as the actual learning that happens in a classroom, it's very small. Yeah. This is why homeschooling is far more efficient because the learning happens immediately. And you're not forcing a kid, okay, you have to do math right now. You have to do science right now. If you want to say, hey, you want to do English today, or do you want to do science today? Those are the power of and the child is not going to get behind. The question is behind whom?
Well, that's it. The whole concept that you said, teaching to mastery, not a grade. The grades have no meaning, and you're not just talking about grades as an ABC. You're even talking about first, second, third, fourth, fifth. These things don't have any meaning. They're arbitrary. They're part of the system. So, if you're watching this or listening to this and you're thinking, I to your point, what if my kid falls behind or my child is in 6th grade and I want to pull them out? Will they still be able to go to college? Like they have you're still thinking in this arbitrary system where an age correlates with a grade, correlates with a timeline that isn't yours and isn't your child's, when your child has their whole life ahead of them. They have their whole life ahead of them. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself why high school, like your daughter's already in college, 14 years old. Why do we arbitrarily have them go to school until they're 17 or 18 years old? Why are these things arbitrary? Why 4 years for college? Right. Why this many years for high school? These are arbitrary numbers that do not correlate with anything real in terms of, well, we checked it out and it takes exactly 4 years to learn all the things you need to know between this age and this age. There's no such study. There's no such evidence.
Hey, our daughter never even took the SAT.
I know. And this is the thing. She did middle school in 8 months, a whole 3 years worth of middle school in 8 months. And she's in college. She basically skipped high school because she was ready for college. Right. So the thing is, you got to think education differently, and you have to.
And that's what mastery does. Because if they know it, why do you have to go over it again?
And think how many things we go over twice, right? We all took all the things with the possible exception of math, which, you keep going. And some of the sciences go, obviously we kept going with that. But if you can already read at college level and you're, 10 or 11 years old, why? That was the case with my eldest daughter. She was reading at college level in elementary school, which was off the charts in verbal. And she said, Mommy, they don't have a reading level for me. I'm so bored. I don't know what to do. And then in high school, she spent 1 year in public high school because after homeschooling for a while, I had to put them in public because of divorce. And then she's there in freshman year. She begged her dad to go home. She said, I don't want to go to high school. Please, can I not go to high school? He said, well, if you go for 1 year and get straight A's, you can go home. So of course she got straight A's, but she got in trouble so many times because she was reading in her desk her own book, like something she wanted to read, as opposed to doing whatever it was that they were supposed to be. She would finish the work. She'd finished something already and she was bored and she'd have a novel open and she's reading in the desk. You're not supposed to be doing that, or you're not supposed to read ahead, or you're not supposed to do what the other kids are doing. So the lesson she learned was that it was somehow her obligation to slow herself down. That coupled with all the years she spent in public school, that after homeschooling, where she spent a few years there, she started learning, oh, I can phone it in. I really don't, I already know 90% of this stuff. Mm-hmm. So I can just kind of like one eye open, one arm tied behind my back, check the box, did the work.
Yep.
So she did the bare minimum getting A's, getting high score. Oh, we wish we had 10 Emmas in our class, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's super. But my child is missing out. In the meantime,
Yes.
she could be here. She could be studying who knows what. She could have written her novel already. She wanted to write a novel, and now she's never done it because she got to this place where she's like, oh, well, it probably wouldn't be as good as what anybody else could do. Like, she sort of like lowered her own expectations to match those of the system. She's coming back out of that. But you get my point that
that's tyranny of the system.
They learn lessons that are not written down, that you, the parent, didn't realize they were learning, but they're learning them nonetheless. And some of them are not too flattering to the parents. They're not too flattering to us because we take them there. Like I said, my kids weren't enduring such horrific bullying like we've read about. They had some, but I would get direct questions. Why are you making me go here? Why are you doing this to me?
And that's a legitimate question.
It is a legitimate question. And of course, I was in the unenviable position of having to say, you don't want to badmouth the other parent in a divorce situation. The court said so. So I just had to blame the government. I was like, the court's making me do it, which was true. So I was just like, I'll teach them to hate government early, so, and they did, and they do. But it's just so sad because I think, to your point, parents envision it's 8 hours. I have to personally be the teacher as opposed to have my child do a fair amount. They're not teaching themselves. They're learning. There's a difference.
And here's something to that. Sorry to interrupt, but
no, please.
It's whenever this is why we stress teaching to mastery and not to a grade, because of course grades are an arbitrary thing, and I think grades are actually detrimental to a child's self-esteem. Because when I was in school, I'd get a paper back and I got a 92, right? And I felt pretty good. And I feel good about myself. I did great. I missed a couple things. I don't care about that. 92. Good job. I look at my desk mate and he got a 98. And suddenly my 92 didn't matter. I felt like crap because I didn't get higher. And so that hurt my self-esteem.
Yeah.
And the thing is because it's a number, it puts a value on it. That number becomes a value of how the child sees themselves. Now, if we erase that and say, when you know it, you know it. This is why we have 3 levels. We have like an introductory level, then we have a proficiency, and then after proficiency becomes mastery.
Or advanced.
Advanced. The thing is when you teach to mastery, the teacher, yourself or parent or whatever, they know they can just ask questions and to know if they know it. And if they can teach you back.
Sure.
Because that's one of the air marks of whether you know something is if you can teach it. And so
Absolutely.
If you say, hey, tell me about the this science cycle or whatever, tell me about grafting numbers, and have them teach it to you. Right. And so you can assess their knowledge because you've gone through that. Now, a lot of parents are worried that I have to teach algebra. I don't remember algebra. Right.
Oh, good. And there's so many materials.
I know. I don't know about history. I don't remember anything about history. And you know what? There's an advantage. You now have an advantage, because one thing about children is they're actually very social, and if you become a fellow student and you're both learning together, like early American history, they said they have now a comrade to learn these things. And you can even say, gosh, I didn't know that
you can watch a documentary and discuss things together after the fact. And
pretty soon
there's your curriculum. you
become the curriculum builder.
Yeah.
And you become somebody who's going along the journey with them.
Yeah.
That means a lot,
Right.
especially if you're building that relationship with your children. It's like I have a meme that I post about, I love you so much, I'll relearn algebra.
Yeah, that's funny.
Yeah. And
Well, it's
so,
true though.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can find resources to use where you don't have to relearn anything. The child is going to learn it on their own, and then if and when they come to you for a question, like you said, it's more like, okay, now I need to learn this alongside you. And I've found with my daughter, especially with math, because there's a lot I don't remember. She likes to be the expert, or she likes to know more than I know. But it's not like an arrogant thing. It's not like, like, haha, I know something you don't know. It's more
Yeah.
like, oh, mom, check it out. Do you remember that from when they taught you in school? And it actually is a nice counterbalance, because I can say, you're learning it the right way. You're learning it better than I learned it in school. Congratulations. And she feels even better about herself, because it's like,
exactly.
I'm so glad I'm homeschooled. Poor mom. Poor mom. Mom didn't get to be homeschooled.
We've experienced that same thing.
Yeah. And it's this kind of thing where she feels extra special that she's getting to do it herself. With the kids when they were little, you talk about choice and agency. And hopefully people are listening. If you're wondering, well, what do I do with if I have multi-age kids? I have 3 kids at 3 different ages, and what do I do? Well, what I did was I just took bins and each one of them had their own little bin. And there were folders in there, and inside each colored folder had a type of work. And so if it was handwriting, or if it was some kind of thing I wanted them to read, or, whatever it was, math, something, and I would put it in the bin for the week. And I would say, by the end of the week, I would like everything in that bin to have been done and moved to mommy's pile, like put it in my pile so I could look at it. Right. And you could do it in any order. I don't care. You could do it all in one day. You could do it across 3 days. You could do a little bit every day and be done on Friday. I don't care when you do it or what order you choose to do it in, and, go by your mood, whatever you want, and then just put it in the bin. Well, each of my children did this differently.
Yes.
Now imagine they're all different ages, and the work was arranged at, they're roughly their age level. Although, believe it or not, the middle and the eldest were working at math at the same level. They were reading at the same level within about 6 months. That's the other thing, guys, is that your kids may be different ages, but that doesn't automatically mean that they're at some kind of arbitrary different level. They were doing the same work, and it was only the baby that was, still working letters and stuff. But they had such different styles of going through this work. The eldest was very much I'm going to do all my reading because that's my favorite subject. And I had to try to counsel her, like, maybe leaving your least favorite stuff to the end is not the best way to go, because then it would be like Friday and she'd be like all upset. Meanwhile, the middle child was very much, I'm doing a little bit of everything every day. I'm dividing it up into equal portions. And she was like very methodical about it. So they could not have been more different. And what was great for me as a mom, you probably experienced this too, is I learned so much about my children, about their personalities, about how and why they make the decisions they make, how their brains work, how to help them, not just academically, but emotionally. When I'd see them struggling with something and I'd see another one struggling, like, you're with them. So it's not just the bond that's stronger. You're a student of your children when you're their teacher. Okay. You're the observer of their behavior, of all the stuff, and it goes into your own mind, and you become the absolute expert on them. And so as they age and go through these developmental phases, when they come to you, and your daughter probably came to you with, I want to start a business or whatever. You were like, a lot of parents might be like, I don't, can you do that? Like,
Exactly.
you knew that she was not only capable of doing it, but worthwhile, maybe putting some money into it, because you've been on the journey the whole way.
You invest in their creativity. That's what you're doing.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
And go ahead.
No.
Okay. There's another thing to help some of your audience is the fact that especially in our clients, they ask, well, I wasn't good in math, or I wasn't good in history or something like this. And it really was a concern for them. And so I tell them, my daughter learned Japanese. I don't know Japanese. I didn't teach her Japanese. And so we have to realize that they have their own brain and they have their own abilities to learn whatever they want to learn. And if maybe it's not Japanese, maybe it's Minecraft. They learn the rules of a game or whatever they want to learn, and you didn't teach them anything. And this is this insidious idea that there has to be a teacher for somebody to learn.
Yeah, it's so not true.
And that is the myth that is being perpetrated. But and it changes. The myth changes a little bit, and they'll say, you're not a certified teacher. You're not.
I see Cindy in the audience. Maybe she can. She's a former teacher, and she mentioned here when we were talking about discipline, she said half the day is spent on discipline. But I would love for her to chime in on the whole you're not a certified teacher, because that is, I was a certified teacher, and I'll tell you what was included in certification: a lot of professional bureaucratic mumbo jumbo that was only relevant inside the system, and it had absolutely nothing to do with me as a teacher, my skills as a presenter of information, as a person interacting with children, as a classroom manager. It really had nothing to do with that. Absolutely. And Unknown Sailor says, that is an appeal to authority fallacy and drives me into apoplectic rage. I'm right there with you.
Yes,
absolutely. And yes, Cindy says, yes, certified teachers were sometimes the worst. I was not certified when I started and was better for it. Yep. It is absolutely.
And I taught, I was a college instructor, 20 years ago. So, I mean, and the thing is you learn certain things and how to fill out, the paperwork and lesson plans, and that's fine. But what we're talking about in homeschooling is building relationships. Yes, there's all kinds of academic learning going on, right. But really it's about building that strong parent-child relationship that is being stolen from us from public school. And that's right. Really the big issue. Yeah. And because of that, when the state replaces the parents is when they are able to control us.
Absolutely.
And that's really the big play involved. And this is why the simple act of homeschooling, a mother or father to homeschool their children, right, is so dangerous. So much of
that's why they want to ban it. They want to get rid of it so badly.
Yes, it's so dangerous, and such a strong political function. I mean, think about it. You can spend 20 years fighting the school board, going through getting signatures and everything, and very little is ever changed. But hey, you could have spent that time with your kids homeschooling them, and it would have been far greater bang for your buck, more efficient,
absolutely,
more efficient, more return on investment, everything.
I did not know this. Unknown Sailor says the Navy teaches people how to be an instructor in 3 weeks. That is how long the school for it is. Don't tell me being a teacher takes a master's degree. Well, I have a master's in education, and I agree with you. I would say that most of what I learned in graduate school to get my master's, because I didn't have an undergrad in education, my undergrad was American Studies. Most of what I learned that was valuable was my student teaching. So, which I didn't need to go to school to get a master's degree for. The only other thing I got out of it was I got a window into, from the university side out, I got a window into the crazy that was, they handed me Paulo Freire in one of my classes, and I went, what? It's like, he's a communist. What are we doing? But I was the only person in the class. It was in 1989. And I was like, can you help me understand why we're reading this guy? And the professor said, teaching is a political act, and you're da, da, da. And that's when I knew that the professor at a minimum was, cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, at least not somebody I wanted to listen to. So I got through the class, I did my best, etc. But I thought it was isolated to the grad school. I thought it was like, okay, this is what, crazy liberal school, that's how it is. But I'm going to go out there and teach, and it's not going to be like that. Wrong. So, but the master's degree, like my college degree, unfortunately, were primarily a waste of time and money. Yeah. They really were. I think there are reasons to go to college, there are reasons to go to graduate school, but for, most of the things that people go for, probably not. And I wanted to ask you, because there are parents out there who will say, when you speak about like mastery grades, okay, this all sounds great, but if I don't give my child grades, or they're homeschooled and they don't have this, thing to show, and they decide they want to go to college, what's going to happen? Now, as I was listening to you speak about mastery, my initial thought was, well, my goodness, if they know it, they know it. So if the college in question wants them to take an SAT test, or, they do some they can present, evidence that they know what they know. You, mom or dad, going A doesn't prove anything.
Well, you want to go into that, how you developed?
Yeah, please explain, because I want people listening to understand how, yes, you can do this and still send your child to college if that's what they want to do.
So in addition to becoming an expert of your children in the whole homeschooling journey, you also learn to be creative, and you learn how to translate that into the language that schools are used to, getting that information from, like the grades. Yes, you teach to mastery, but at the end of the day, you need a transcript, right, from high school to go into college. So if they mastered something, that's A or A plus, however you want to put it on your transcript. It's just translating that.
And you're building the transcript. You can build the transcript.
And so, but still, you have to follow the rules that they have there for homeschoolers. Every state is different. Every state has these requirements for high school. Just find out what your local high school has as requirements for high school. And most of the time, it's 4 English courses, right? And supposedly they say, 1 per year. But if they mastered it sooner, you're your own homeschool. They mastered it sooner, so that's done. You can count it on their first year, moving on to the second one. But sometimes those English courses can be different. There's other things such as mythology. You don't have to have the same boring 4 years of English composition or literature. You can have other things like mythology that translates as an English component. So
that's true. If you just keep track, and if you keep track of what your child is reading, and and so on, I think you can give your child a pre-collegiate sort of education, or encourage them to cover enough material that you can carve it out and draw it up on a piece of paper so that it aligns. You don't have to be so literal, and you don't have to have everything accredited. And I mean, there are just so many myths associated with this, that you can't participate in any element of the post high school credentialing system if you didn't participate in the system itself. And that's just not true. It's absolutely false. There is not a state in the country that I'm aware of that requires you to have, gotten your high school diploma from, an accredited institution if you were properly legally homeschooling. I mean, they do unfortunately still require us to do the thing that the state makes us do to say we're homeschooling. Can't just show up one day. But that's about it. If you comply with whatever that is,
as a homeschooler, you can build your child's transcript. Now, in addition to the transcript, write up a
letters of recommendation.
Well, I wasn't going to do letters. I was going to go
course description.
Course description. You can write a course description, because they may request that.
Yeah.
So, so this class covered this, and these are the resources that we use. The course description.
And again, you can see the templates from the high schools that they have all that information.
I wouldn't even follow theirs, because yours
Yeah.
probably off the top of your head is going to be 10 times better and more comprehensive. And there are templates online that you can find that are free, where you can do for homeschool transcripts, where you can, how do I write a good, like, the different homeschool sites, how do I write a good course description?
Yes.
And now I did a video for the members of my private community, reviewing different technical tools, apps and websites and so forth that you can use to run your homeschooling experience. And they run the gamut from being, very much like school and aligned to state standards and stuff, which I don't recommend, obviously. And then things where it's just literally a really cool template that allows you to put in assignments or put in stuff and have the kid check off their work. It's almost like a to-do list. But guess what? It automatically produces a transcript, and all you have to do is go in and tweak your stuff. There are all kinds of tools. It's unbelievable how far we've come in the homeschooling world, that if anyone's watching or listening to this and even considering homeschooling, one of the first things I suggest that you do is not to choose anything. Okay, don't hear me say go looking for a curriculum, but just casually peruse. Just go homeschooling materials. Just casually look at what's out there. And I'll just caution you, there's so much, you'll probably be overwhelmed, which brings me to my next question for you guys, because I know that you have a myth that you want to bust about the best curriculum. There are a lot of parents out there. What's the best curriculum? I want one curriculum. What's the best curriculum?
It's mind-blowing. It's a tiresome.
And here's the reason why we're so overwhelmed right now is because of the pandemic, which started a homeschooling movement, not a voucher movement. I don't want to even go into there, but the thing is it was a homeschooling movement, and we went from 2.5 million homeschoolers to 5 million. Right. And that's about 10% of the population. Now they're talking about numbers of homeschoolers, and I don't trust their numbers anymore.
No. And I'm sure they're wrong.
The thing about it is it became an emerging market, because all these education entrepreneurs started throwing out a bunch of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's mediocre, and some of it's just not good at all. Yep. But it's confusing and daunting to try to figure out the curriculum. What we say is develop the parent-child relationship first. The books will come. The curriculum will come. The best curriculum you can do, because you can choose the best curriculum. Let's say it's best curriculum for your kid. But if you don't have that relationship, it's going to fail.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because
it's not going to work.
Forcing kids to do endless worksheets is definitely not the way to go. You will fail, and your kids will hate you.
Even if they start off as a kid who likes worksheets.
Sure.
And those kids do exist. But if you get too reliant on things like that, then even the kid who likes it is going to wake up one day and not like it. So, but I couldn't agree more. The first order of business is build that relationship. Right. Now, the parent who comes to you and says, okay, here's the problem. We're already in middle school. We're already in freshman year in high school, but I can't take it anymore. My kid's miserable. I'm miserable. Everything is so crazy. I don't want to fight with the school board and the school anymore. We just want to get out. What's step one?
Decompress.
Yeah, it's called deschooling. Yes. And it's I can't remember, Illich, I believe, is the guy. Ivan Illich. He wrote a book.
So you give yourselves a break, because you're going to basically have a good reset, because you're going to have to forget everything that happened and start anew in an entirely different way. And that's what I always say. It has to be different. It can't even look like what they had before, because what they had before was not working. And even if it was working, it's not going to work at home, because home, there's distractions, there's other more fun stuff to do. And you know what? You have to bank on that fun stuff that's available as part of your learning.
Right. And we're going to go into, and we're working on our second and third book right now in the Kids Don't Need series. And we haven't announced that yet. This is the first time. We're going to have other books in that series.
And we're writing those books because we're seeing a little bit more problems that are coming from people trying to do homeschooling, but not having the tools they need to succeed.
Right. And that's really the biggest thing. But going back to the deschooling, in 1971, Ivan Illich wrote a book, Deschooling Society. Great book. Something to look up. And if you want to get a quick primer, just type in deschooling or Ivan Illich quotes, and you'll kind of get an idea of what the premise was of his book. But basically, you're going to decompress first, and build a relationship, and then you go to your child. Let's say it's a freshman high school, that you just pulled out of the system. You say, okay, we're going to be starting homeschooling, and we need you. We want you to direct your education.
Right.
We're here, and we need to talk about what you want as far as your education, and because you're getting them on board. That brings in the aspect of agency.
Yes.
And being in control of their lives.
Yes.
And they need to practice agency. Now, the school system, they say you have to have permission to go to the bathroom. And then the next day at graduation,
and you can't eat.
Yeah.
Eat when we tell you to eat.
And at graduation, they say, what do you want to be? What do you want? Where do you want to go to college? And they have
it's not even that. It's like choosing whether you go to college or not is probably the most consequential decision you will make in your life on your own. And we're asking kids who've not really been allowed to make a major decision, not even a minor decision.
Right.
And it's just unconscionable. I really feel like so much of what is done to children, I'm going to say to children, because people will say we're doing it for them. No, you're not. You're doing it to them.
Right.
Is a form of abuse. It's not normal. And we just don't talk about it. We don't think about it. We're like, well, this is what everyone's done. It's what I did. And so therefore it's okay. Well, like maybe what was done to you and maybe what you did was bad. Did it ever occur to you that we have the amount of mental illness that we have the amount of addiction problems we have the levels of depression and dissatisfaction and all the problems that we have because people like have a kind of soul sickness of I am not in charge of my own life. Like I've arrived at this point of adulthood. You see it on Instagram. You'll see memes all the time. They're sort of funny until you realize how dark it is. We'll be like, well, when I was a kid, I used to suspect that the adults didn't know what they were doing. And now that I'm adult, I realize I was right. It's like,
right.
That's funny, but it's not funny.
And so really to break out of that, you have to train children in agency and letting them, make decisions. And here's a good example. I mentioned about, choosing their educational path, at the start of high school, but it actually starts way back earlier. How you could teach agency to a toddler? It's real simple. You get 2 flavors of toothpaste. And instead of saying, brush your teeth, authority and everything, you say,
which one do you want to use to brush your teeth?
Which one do you want tonight? And then they get to choose. And the act of choosing, the idea of defiance that some people call it goes away. Because now they're like, oh, I'll take the grape flavor, well, whatever flavor, mint or whatever. But the thing is they get to choose. Right. And that little choice goes a long way. And you start giving them and letting them practice decision making, right?
It's the same thing with the learning. When, you don't come home and bring school home and say things like, you need to do your homework or you have to do this, whatever. What I used to say to my kids is, when you do your handwriting practice, you'll be able to write a note to grandma, like, and when
Sure.
when you've read that book, you'll be able to go get the next book, so the when and after you've done this, like I went ahead and presumed that, this is something that you're going to do and give them that benefit of the doubt. And here's what you're going to get out of it, because why am I giving them work to do that they're not going to get anything out of?
Exactly.
I mean,
What's
if
the
you
point
want
of it?
go ahead.
Yeah, I was
Adriana.
going to bring up that with the agency also comes learning time management. Like when you explain with your kids on how you gave them freedom and how they turn their wit and how they turn their work, they learn time management skills. They learn about themselves and what times in the day they're more productive over others, and they learn about procrastination. They have to learn the consequences of procrastination. A lot of these kids, they don't learn that until they're in college, and this is why they struggle so much, and a lot of the kids who end up in college don't graduate.
That's right. I think we're now up to 30% attrition in the first 2 years, and that is one of the big reasons why they're so accustomed to having daily deadlines, and college stretches things out sometimes to weekly or monthly or whatever, and they struggle, or the volume of work is so much bigger because the expectations in their school were much lower, and they're really not prepared.
No.
Colleges are continuing to accept students, even though the high schools are preparing them less and less well. And there's a limit to how much the colleges that are designed to credential you for adult life can lower their expectations. I've already lowered them quite a bit, I have to say. I went to a private high school, and that was quite challenging in the early 80s. And when I went to college, I felt I'd gone backwards. Like your daughter, I felt I probably could have done the work in my college and when I was in my high school years. So they'd already kind of dumbed things down. And but I look at, my own 15-year-old. So, homeschooled back into school. Now she's out now 3 years, and she's learning the hard way right now what procrastination does. Now, I've not been very strict. I told her, the things that we were covering this year, what I wanted her to read. We worked on it together. What do you want to read? What do you want to learn here? Okay. But then I told her, I said, your day is your day. I'm not going to tell you it's 10 o'clock, get up in the morning and do this and that. I'm not going to do that. You know what we have to do to get through effectively 10th grade, like before we start moving on to the next step, before I can say that you've mastered this material, this is the volume of stuff I'd like you to read and do to get through that. And here we are, it's the end of May. And, other kids who are going to go to school, or they're sort of done or they're finishing up. And she's like, I'm not done. And I said, well, why did that happen? It's like, why can't you start your summer of not doing anything? Now, a lot of homeschoolers don't have a summer break. They go to school all year, whatever. And I told her that. I said, honey, I don't care if you do a little bit every day and you go to school all year long. This is really up to you, but I want it to be your decision.
Sure.
And one of the ways that you're going to decide is seeing how long it takes you to get this amount of work done. So she's now learned, because she wanted to be done by Memorial Day. She really did. And now she's like, I'm not. And I said, okay, well, what would you do differently next time? She's learning.
That's perfect, because it's a question of children are untrained. Okay. They're not misbehaving per se. They are untrained. And so it takes a parent to say, okay, I'm here to help you train. Now, one mistake that a lot of parents make is they become the harbinger of natural consequences, right? If it's natural consequences, you're not involved.
That's right.
Okay. And so, yes, the consequences that happen is, from procrastination, like you mentioned, those you don't have to raise a finger to really correct a behavior. Nope. You can say, hey, it's getting a little late in the month. I mean, I know that your goal is this, right? Because if you say your goal is this,
that's right. And that's what I told her. I was like, you set the goal, not me.
Right.
It's like, I don't care.
And I know that this is what you really wanted, and this is what you really valued. And I'm here to help you do those things. And so I'm just giving you a reminder that this is what's happening. Do you need some help? Is there any way I can help you attain your goals?
She
That's
figured
a
it
different
out.
type of parenting.
It really is. And she
Uh-huh.
figured out on her own that she took too long when she was reading her last novel in her novel study. She was reading, if she felt like it, she'd read a little bit, and the next day she'd read a lot more, whatever. She was just kind of like lackadaisical about how much. And she realized that the book took her probably twice as long to read as it ought to have, because of the pattern of, reading, answering the questions that she was answering. And so when she looked at the calendar and she said, "Oh my God, why did that take me so long?" Right. And I said, "Well, what was your process? What did you do? Why did you decide to do it that way?" So we had a whole conversation about the process. I said, "Well, what do you think you'd like to try to do it differently?" She said, "This time I'm dividing the book into sections of equal amount. I am going to read that amount each and every day. That way I know in advance I'm going to be done in this many days." And then, so I said, "If that's how you would feel better," she goes, "Yeah, because then I can predict, instead of just waking up one day and like a month went by. Why did it take so long? I'll do 2 pages today and 10 pages tomorrow." So now she's got it all with Post-it notes. And I mean, okay, that's her,
That's her system.
it's her system,
Exactly.
and she's happy with it. Here's what I noticed. She was 10 times more stressed out. Now, I'm not grading. I'm not sitting here like, "Where's your work? What are you doing?" But kids sometimes do put pressure on themselves, especially if they set the goal.
Yes.
And so she set a goal and she was like, "Oh, I'm stressed. I'm not going to make my goal." And I said, "Well, okay, well, good news. It's your goal." So you could decide how to feel about it. And it's not mine. I'm not mad. Nobody's mad. Nothing bad's going to happen. I said, "But you can also change it around." And so she changed it around. And even though she still missed her mark, I said, "Do you feel better?" She said, "Yes, I feel much less stressed out now because I have a plan and I know what's happening. It's very predictable." And as I said, your child has a personality.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're not bonsai farmers, or designers. We're more like regular farmers, where we like soil, fertilizer, plant the seed, like water, but they're going to grow in whatever pattern they're going to grow in. And it's really important to recognize and nurture that natural personality and let them be comfortable with it and accepting of it, because
Right.
it's unlikely to change dramatically. It really is unlikely to change.
And you became an advocate for your daughter rather than a disciplinarian.
Exactly.
I
And-
hate
and-
that job.
And the thing
it
is
doesn't work.
and what we say in the book and talk about discipline is just regular practice towards mastery.
That's all it is.
And the thing is if somebody we see somebody at work and they're very diligent and they do all that, we say they're very disciplined, right?
That's right.
But no one's yelling at them.
No, and you know what? Here's the thing, folks. It's really not, or ought not be, different inside of a school when we talk about undisciplined classrooms and so on. Good classroom managers don't yell. They don't punish. I'm not saying they shouldn't be allowed to send someone out of the room, but they set very clear expectations up front. They hold students accountable for, in particular, character behaviors. Okay. So that if you listen to the shows I've done with Catherine Burbelsing, she explains it very well. So it's more about teaching them how to make good choices and then holding them accountable for the choices they've made when they're not so great, and praising them when they do make good choices and things like that. But it's really not that different. It does exist within a system, which I don't love, but me saying I don't like being a disciplinarian simply means I don't want to engage in anything that is, punitive, or saying, now you have to do this or that. I want her to experience real life, and real life delivers consequences. There's no way around it. If you don't get something done on your job, it's probably not going to go well for you. Right.
Right.
And so I would rather have her learn that now when she's 15 and she's home and the consequences are not so severe, and she can learn what it feels like to get it done, what it feels like to not get it done, and learn to like the former and dislike the latter, but on her own.
Yeah, exactly. Because what happens when you force or micromanage your kids, that's going to form a wedge in the relationship. You're basically
Absolutely.
undoing everything that you work hard to build that bond and make a good, positive relationship. So you don't want to do that.
No one likes a micromanager.
No. And so things, kids will make mistakes. And the mistake that parents do when they're teens, they have this high expectations that they look like adults as a teenager in a way. So we think they're capable of doing all these things. They can, but it comes with a lot of mistakes. And we have to let them make those mistakes because they learn from them. That's part of learning the responsibility and the consequences. And we need to be a cheerleader. We need to be a team. We're going to be on their side, be part of their team and advocating for their progress.
At the same time, I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here. I do push my daughter outside her comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, and I wrote about this today, while I do give her choices within a category. So, for example, if we're doing, novel studies for 10th grade, whatever, this year, I chose the books. Now, I didn't choose every single book. I chose a larger selection of books. And then I said, okay, you're going to pick books within this selection with a couple that I'm going to insist upon. There's a couple I really want you to read because I would feel remiss if you didn't read them, as it's my responsibility to expose you to certain things. So I gave her this choice. We got ready to read The Good Earth by Pearl Buck. And she's one chapter and, Mom, don't make me read this. It's so boring. Oh my God, I don't like this writing style. Blah, 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 blah. Continue. You have to continue. And 2 chapters in, same story. 3 chapter. 3rd chapter, she was like begging, pleading, like, please, I'm not. And I said, no, just a single word. Keep going. And then next thing I know, about 3 days later, Mom, where are you in the book? Because we're reading together. I said, why? She said, because I kind of read ahead and I really want to talk about this book with you right now. And I said, wait, what chapter are you on? She said, I'm on chapter 12. And I said,
oh my goodness.
Oh, that's interesting. So maybe it got not so boring anymore. And she's like, yeah, it's actually really good. And I was like, okay, so maybe now, so we kind of had a little laugh about it. But I also do encourage, I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I think that we do have knowledge as parents, maybe not in every subject, but there's wisdom we can impart. There are things that we can push our kids to do that are outside their comfort zone. And that's important too, because they don't know what they don't know. And I think it is, while I don't say you have to be the teacher of all things. I think you do need to recognize that if one of your goals is to reproduce the culture that you enjoy and would like to continue to live in and, have your children live in, the only way that's going to happen is if you actually pass it along, and they're not going to immediately like it necessarily. It's not always fun. The vocabulary can be harder. They have to read things at a different level, of different genre, different, whatever, or write at a different level, or do math at a different level. There will be times in every child's experience of education where they're not going to want to do a thing that is important for them to do. And I don't know how to advise people. Maybe you guys do. I can advise like in English and history, but I mean, even there, I could be wrong. What do you tell parents when they say things like, how do I know when to push and when to lay off on the specifics?
I have one. We need to teach them how to discipline themselves. Basically, there are times where you have to push yourself to do things and overcome those obstacles. So that being said, because teens are not confident and sometimes they're perfectionists, they get to a stopping point and they don't know how to overcome it. And sometimes we need to be the ones giving them courage and say, you can do this, just keep going, just push a little harder and you'll overcome it. And guess what? Once they overcome it, they go, oh, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
Yeah. And years ago, I wrote a little parable on about the sword master and the prince. And basically, the sword master has to teach the prince how to use a sword. And he has to gauge, the sword master has to gauge himself on how much pressure he's going to do so that the prince doesn't get discouraged, but also to push the prince enough. to
So he doesn't
where
get bored.
yes,
He has
not
to be
always.
like,
They always have to level up. And so sometimes leveling up requires some sacrifice or effort or whatever.
Yes.
And one of the phrases that is very useful in that is be patient and your patience will be rewarded.
mhm.
But there's one more that's even more important. And it's in our book. And that is answering the question, what's in it for me? Because if you are not able to say, like a kid says, why do we have to learn all this stuff? And you're not able to have an answer for that satisfies them. What's in it for me? You're not ready to teach that subject as a parent or even a teacher.
Yeah.
Right,
Okay.
right.
If you say, oh, well, it's just required. Everyone learns it. This doesn't work.
There's got to be value or meaning behind everything that they learn.
It's like when we're talking about math, our daughter said, why do we have to know this stuff? And I said, so we can predict the future. And she's like, what? I got her attention. And that's when because she's an aficionado of mythology. She loves mythology. And so I gave her example of the Oracle of Delphi, right? How the Oracle could predict the future. And I tied it into algorithms. And
very good. I
yes.
like that.
So how algorithms can be
Cool.
used to create predictive models.
Mm-hmm.
And predictive models are foretelling the future.
That's very cool. I like it. I also like this. Unknown Sailor says accomplishing a difficult task builds real self-esteem, self-esteem. And that is not discussed enough because again, when they keep lowering things, saying it's going to build self-esteem, it's exactly backwards.
Yes.
And I've seen it with my own daughter. I've seen her since she came out of school. Her self-esteem has gone up so much. And yet the work I've given her is so much more challenging than what they were giving her at school, to the point where there have been days where she's like, I can't do this. I'm like, you can. We just need to break it into pieces. Tell me what you're having trouble with. And so we work on it. And you're absolutely right. When she overcomes it, gets to the next point, she actually told me about the math because we went back to the beginning. We started over. They had taught math in such a wackadoodle way. We started over from the beginning. Now, it only took about a month to get from like addition all the way, like to fractions, but because it was more review. But she told me, she said, if they had taught this to us from the beginning, I would love math.
Exactly.
She's like, I can't believe I hated math all these years. She said, this is kind of fun. And I'm like, couldn't you throttle all these teachers that, I think how many kids out there would love math, but, they were taught poorly. And I said, I feel you. I get it, So now the kid doesn't hate math. Yay, accomplishment. But she also feels really good about herself because she was one of those people walking and going, I'm bad at math.
Oh, no.
I suck at this. I can't do math. And think how bad you feel about yourself, how incompetent you feel. If every time you see numbers, it kind of scares you and I don't want to know money. Now she's like, oh yeah, no one's going to pull a fast one on me because I can calculate percentages. So this is so important that it's part of the agency piece, but it's also that whole, real life self-confidence and all of that. And I really wish parents would have, this experience for themselves, because then they could see firsthand. Now, we didn't talk about, and I know we're running long, but it's kind of big. It's a shift, but I know one of the things that you've said about homeschooling is it's the least political movement. And that brings me to a sort of charged question.
Go ahead.
I'm going to just ask.
Okay.
Tell the audience what your take is on school choice.
Okay.
Brace yourselves.
Brace yourselves, everybody. Now, it's not for my audience that knows me. It probably won't be very new, but they probably think I'm just the lone freak in the world who says
here's some quick throwdowns here, and that is, I was against vouchers in the early 90s from Newt Gingrich. Okay, for the same reasons I'm against it now. But now it's changed. because vouchers, all it was a different accounting method. Instead of zip codes, it's now a voucher, right? But here's the thing. It's being sold as school choice, where magically it's supposed to, and there's some things I wrote down on what they say it's supposed to do. It's supposed to break the teachers' unions, vouchers, ESAs. It's supposed to stop the woke agenda. It's supposed to get rid of underperforming teachers. And
sorry.
And provide competition in the free market.
It's not a free market.
Yes. Okay, wait. And this is just what they say. And this is what they, and people believe it. So, oh yeah, okay. It's gonna, okay.
Great,
now the question is what are we to find? Are we to find the free market in a government program? Because that's all it is. Now, I mean, that's just
keep your doctor. If you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor.
Oh, of course.
Remember?
And
it's just a free market solution. We're just going to subsidize it.
And in any of the, yes, exactly. But in any of the legislation that has passed so far, because they still haven't really gotten into the procedural rules and regulations on how it's going to implement and accountability and maybe wellness checks at your house, or maybe accounting audits for your whatever you spend with. And this is specifically for homeschooling, right? Because the 90s vouchers didn't include homeschooling. They said, nope, we're not going to cover it. It's just for government schools and private schools. And one of the big problem that they said back then is, and religious schools mainly, is the threat of them having to hire people that they didn't want to hire.
That will happen.
And well, this was the argument back in the early 90s. It's saying our autonomy as a private Christian school or a private religious school, whatever, we can't now say no to a teacher that doesn't hold our values, right? And so, and then about the curriculum that is supposed to happen. This is a different animal. This has UNESCO involved.
Yes, it does.
Okay, this has the
when UNESCO's championing school choice, there's something deeply wrong with it.
Right, because it's listed in the Sustainable Development Goal 4, our SDG 4, and it's actually, they don't call it vouchers. What they call it is a demand side financing, and you can look that up. Anyone is interested, and in fact, the poster boy for school choice is one of the UNESCO fellows. For their policy lab.
Never answers any questions about why that is either.
Yes, and the thing about it is I've been twittering back and forth with him for years, because at the start of the pandemic, and I'm not going to say his name, but the thing
has he called you dangerous yet?
Not yet, but he has DM'd me a couple of times.
He called me dangerous.
Okay.
I'm scary.
Yes, we should be all more dangerous. But dangerous to the system, because the system is about control. And I've
been accused of hating poor kids. I've been accused of wanting to keep kids trapped in terrible schools. I've been told that, I'm demanding, that making the perfect the enemy of the good.
Oh yeah.
And all of these things. And it's all, to me anyway, it's garbage, because if there is something we recognize as perfect, which is no government involvement at all in education, and then why are we not even attempting to move the needle in that direction? Why are we giving up entirely and saying, well, we're stuck with this for the rest of eternity, so let's see if we can beg and plead for the government to use our money differently? Like, we wanted them to have more ways to tell us what to do.
when we homeschool, and I'm talking about mass homeschooling, we actually removed their justification for property taxes, for taxing
I know.
our own domiciles. And it also removes their ability, because once we own our homes, they can't seize our property,
or
threaten for seizure of property because of back taxes, right?
Right.
That's a mechanism of control. And I know that there will always be schools, but having a massive behemoth
of a mess,
bureaucratic leviathan is not the answer.
I agree.
Right? There's way more free market choices and stuff like this, and there's also because remember, it's an emerging market. So if you're going to people will say, oh, if you're concerned about the poor, there's charity schools, and there can still be state schools, not federal schools.
Right.
And the thing is there was a time when people were educated without a massive government bureaucracy in this country. And we forget about this. It's only been since we adopted the Prussian system by, John Dewey, right? I believe it's John Dewey. But him and Kirkpatrick were the instrumental and really throwing Maria Montessori under the bus and developing, public school along with Rockefeller, because Rockefeller wanted a system of workers rather than learners and our thinkers. But the thing is the idea of needing a massive bureaucracy is ridiculous. Because people can be educated without all that. And in fact, what we've seen is percentage-wise, more poor people homeschool as far as a percentage.
That is correct. It's such a myth that it's a rich person's thing.
Right.
It really
we're talking
is
about a level like $35,000 a year.
Yeah.
Right. They homeschool about 6 to 7%, and the wealthy, 400,000 and above, they're more apt to do private schools with only like 3% of doing homeschooling. So really, poor people, they educate their children too. Now, of course, we in the homeschooling community, homeschool leaders like yourself and us, we have to help parents overcome these hurdles on how to homeschool and what to do, because the cognitive dissonance that has gone on for so long is the biggest problem. And it's the timidity of parents. Can I really do this?
They can.
We try to bring them into expert level as efficiently as possible so they don't get discouraged and lose heart and abandon the journey altogether, because some parents will get really stressed over the journey, and they just have to keep going because it does get easier in time.
When there are always bad days. There are bad days. I shouldn't say bad. There are hard days with anything that you do. There are days where sometimes you just have to say, all right, we're taking a day. We're just going to take a day. We're going to go to the park. We're going to play. We're going to, do something else. We're going to cook or do a craft, because everybody is just having a moment. And especially when the kids are little, that can happen. If they're going between developmental stages, if they didn't sleep or they were sick recently, there are all kinds of things. But another reason to me, it's better than having to send them to school, because now you got to get a doctor note and, how many days are you sick? And, we got to make up the work. And it's so stressful, not just on the child, it's on the family as well. So every time a parent says to me, but what if I get overwhelmed, or what if this is not going well, or what if this is happening with them? I'm like, well, count on it. Just count on it. Those days will occur. But now compare your worst day of that to your worst day in the system. And I would almost go so far as to promise them it's not going to be comparable.
Right.
And I've experienced both. And, I can't speak to everybody's life and situation, but my worst day of homeschooling was still better than my best day of public schooling.
And you can be totally creative on how you execute homeschooling.
Absolutely.
We have one of our clients, they both work shift work and so they homeschool on the weekends.
Yep.
You make it what you need to make it that works for your family, and every family is different. So don't compare yourself to the other homeschool family. That's the beauty of the freedom, flexibility, and custom aspect of your own homeschool environment. And one of the things that I promote to take the edge off and the pressure is think about homeschooling all year long, because we think life is learning. Why are you breaking when the public school breaks? You learn. Right. Life
you might do different things in the summer because of opportunities for travel or for, being outside. Yeah. But absolutely, I can't think of a reason to stop and that's why I don't even like the term homeschooling, because it still has school in it, but yeah, I completely agree. And, I love what you guys are doing. So before we finish up, tell people what the services are that you offer, how they reach you, how they can work with you, things like that.
Well, first things first is we definitely recommend reading our book, Kids Don't Need School. It's a great primer for first timers, and also gives reminders to those veteran homeschoolers just to remind them again why they're homeschooling.
We also go into some of the philosophy about motivation, what it is and what it isn't, because there's a lot of mythology. Well, mythology, a lot of yes, I can say that it's a lot of
mythology at this point. Yes,
but yeah, it's we give you tools. We give parents tools in the book on how to think about things. We don't promote any curriculum, but we present the 10 major styles of homeschooling that exist currently. And we give a pros and cons about all that. But we look at because we're engineers, we break down difficult subjects and put it into simple language.
Yes.
And so we made it to where our audience can totally get it.
Yes.
And that's what our most important goal is for it to be understandable and simple. And so our website is homeschoollife.us. Our Twitter.
We're also in the process of building courses for parents, just to kind of get them to program their brain about thinking about education in a different way than what they're used to.
Right.
Because it takes a while to break that programming from
Absolutely.
before.
Yeah, it does.
So we're building that, and we will be eventually opening up our website to membership. And so as soon as we finish with the courses and stuff like this, we'll be opening up that, because we want to give value to what we do. For the fee that we're, the small monthly charge that we're going to do. But the thing is because we have to eat too. But
and of course,
I know I keep telling people the same thing, and they're like, "What? Why do you have a membership with like a monthly?" And I'm like, yeah, people like me don't get hired all that easily.
Right. Yeah. And so basically we have our Twitter account. Oh God, I keep calling it Twitter, but it's Homeschool _ LLC. Follow us there. That's where the majority of our activity happens. There's a Facebook. It's under Facebook/group/Kids Don't Need School. That's a repository where people can ask, whatever questions they have or concerns.
We also have the fast track path, which is coaching services. We offer one-on-one coaching services. If you need help really fast and have that support system from us.
And one more thing, we are partnered with another company called Smarter by 1 Degree. If parents have a teen that's going into high school, they can get dual credit for high school and college. And it's a fantastic program where I think the youngest in their program got 12 got their bachelor's degree.
That's awesome.
Because it's self-paced. But check on that.
And it's a great thing for homeschoolers, because one of the worries I had about my kid is I didn't want my child in another institution with who knows who and what they're teaching there. And so to me, the online college level courses, self-paced, made a lot more sense, because that's what we're used to as homeschoolers, right? I couldn't stand the scheduled times of the university, right? Not getting to choose your teacher or your resources. I didn't like that. And Smarter by One Degree is really about high quality lessons. In other words, you're learning these subjects the right way. So that's awesome. Highly recommend it.
So I'm glad that you told me about that, because I for my daughter, I thought, maybe she can go do some local community college classes she doesn't want to go to college. She wants to do a trade, but I thought, maybe she can take some of the classes, but she might want to look at that and see if some of the classes there will achieve, help her achieve the same thing. Some she might have to do in person because of the nature of the trade, but still, it's nice to get that credit. And
that's one of the things that's one of the things I recommend for high school level kids that feel like it's boring and it doesn't have meaning. Earning college credits at the same time is a boost
and it's also a big money saver.
Absolutely.
Yes. Dual enrollment is a big money saver.
Yes.
And not just that, the Smarter by One Degree program is inexpensive. It's way cheaper than regular schooling. And check on, they have prices on there on what they're for a bachelor's, and they're very reasonable.
Right. So if you're watching and you're thinking, I have a high school kid and I want to homeschool them, but gosh, I wouldn't know how to do the algebra, like you said, or calculus or some kind of science or something, or even just English comp. If you don't feel confident teaching that, you can go to Smarter by One Degree, and your child not only will be taking the high school class, but they're getting college credit at the same time for a low price. So why would you not do it? Right.
Exactly. It's even for middle schoolers. So it just depends on your teen, where they're at, and how they feel about learning these things. And just to clarify, our daughter's doing that, but she's also in a community college that has an amazing Japanese program. And so she is taking Japanese classes there, also taking our classes, because she wants to have that hands-on experience.
Well, and then as you've already pointed out at the beginning of the show, she has the flexibility and the time to run her own business.
Exactly.
Okay. Where, if you're going to school between, like 6:45 in the morning at 3 in the afternoon, or 8 to 3, whatever your hours are that you're stuck in a building or you're stuck on somebody else's schedule, even just having a part-time job at Chick-fil-A can be challenging. Sure. And you end up probably working every weekend, and you don't get to work during days. When my eldest was homeschooling, she arranged her day in such a way that she worked at Chick-fil-A, but she worked in nice, hours that she didn't want to be there on every Saturday. She wanted to be there at night. And she was able to save up enough money to buy her own car, by the time she graduated. So there are things that homeschool kids have the opportunity to do that the kids who have to go to school just don't have the opportunity to do. And now she's got a great job while in college, where she's already ahead in the whole food service type of world, because she has so much experience. They were like, wait, she worked the entire pandemic at Chick-fil-A. Wearing the little plastic, laundry bin thing that they made them wear outside, the whole thing, and standing outside for 2 years. And so they took a look at her resume and they're like, yes, when can you start? Kind of thing. So this is important because, as you point out, life is more than just learning academic subjects. Yes. There's a whole world that they're getting adjusted to, and throwing them into the deep end of the pool at 18 and saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to be when you grow up? It's a lot. It's better to start sooner, I think.
Yeah. And they're like, but you're prepared for college, just go. And they sign up for college, and they're on the side undeclared major, right? So they waste time and money because it's not
Lots
cheap.
of money.
And then nothing to show for, which is really, really sad.
It is really sad. It is. So I am so grateful to you guys. Thank you so much for coming on, especially on a Friday night. I encourage everybody to please, go follow them on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, at Homeschool LLC. Also get the book, Kids Don't Need School, and spread this around. If you have friends who have kids in school and they're not happy, and you think they'll listen to you at all, like share this video with them, or share the Twitter handle and the name of the book. And just suggest that they look at their options. I always tell people it's always good to have options. Don't slam the door on something before you've really looked at it, and don't write it off because you work or you think it won't work with your schedule. This is what you make of it. So, truly, there are single parents doing it. There are people who work shift work. There are people who work full-time jobs. You don't have to be rich. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And I really do believe it's the best option for most families and most kids. So that's my final take. Any final thing you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, we're good with
everyone homeschool your kids.
We appreciate.
Just walk away.
We appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, and I think it's important for the continuing existence of our civilization. I think it's important.
Yeah, it is that important.
Because the thing is I can go into more of it, but anyway, thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, everybody. We'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.